It's Maraud over. It's Pab over. It's Hunt over. It's, Force, we could be here forever talking about how the Bad Batch series finale has arrived, and it's over, just like that.
The Bad Batch quickly became one of our favorite Star Wars shows, and unfortunately, it has come to an incredibly emotional ending. Today, Jamie and I are here to list out the top 25 moments from the show.
We're the HoloNet Marauders. We post new videos weekly, so be sure to like and subscribe for more Star Wars content from us.
Now, let's get to this epic list.
Of course, spoilers ahead for the entire Bad Batch series.
Number 25, Riot Racing. Now, most of the things on this list are emotionally impactful moments or badass sequences, but we're going to start off with something that is just flat out fun. In Season 2, Tech, Omega, and Wrecker went with Sid as backup at a Riot Racing track. When Sid's racing droid, Teo, was destroyed, it was Tech who stepped in to be the racer. Tech took a very Tech approach to everything, and by the final lap, he seemed to already be a pro, passing everyone and winning the race in classic Bad Batch fashion. With an arena of people chanting Tech's name, this was both a heartfelt and hilarious moment, before the season took an emotional turn.
Number 24, the Pantora Swoop Bikes, or Hunter vs. Fennec Shand. The first encounter with Fennec Shand and the Bad Batch is something special. Omega has never met a bounty hunter before. She doesn't know the first thing about what a bounty hunter even is. All she knows is that Fennec is a nice lady who offered her help, so she can trust her, right? The naive behaviors of a child who was grown in a lab and saw dirt for the first time just a week prior. This entire sequence of getting her back from Fennec, specifically the swoop bike chase through the Pantoran Skylands, is one of the first moments that the Bad Batch show that they will truly do anything for Omega.
Number 23, Cad Bane vs. Fennec Shand. In a show like The Bad Batch, we of course get some top-notch action sequences, but low-key one of my favorites in the whole series is the one between Cad Bane and Fennec Shand. First off, to see those two square off, a Clone Wars legend and a new bounty hunter from The Mandalorian, was absolutely epic. When eras sort of collide or connect like that, I'm all for it. Ever since 8-year-old me watched Attack of the Clones in 2002, bounty hunters in Star Wars have always been something I thought were cool, especially when they beef with each other. Just look at this fight though. And it all leads to Omega escaping the clutches of Bane and returning to her brothers.
Number 22, Omega and the Mini Batch. These kids. Omega is just the embodiment of bringing hope to those that have none. These kids just wanted to go home. They had no idea what they were even doing there on Mount Tantus. They were just trapped. Each one of them is just like Omega throughout her journey as well, of having that child's curiosity and being so naive that they can't even come up with a good excuse or a lie. Omega leading them in their great escape as well shows just how much she's learned over the course of the entire time of this series. Plus, you gotta love that hug that the kids all give her right when they actually all get outside. It's just like Season 1 when she gives Hunter that hug. Catches him completely off guard as well. Number 21, Gji And The Wookies. What's something that we always saw alongside the clones during the Clone Wars? A Jedi. Now, the Bad Batch are a unique squad, and they didn't have a Jedi, but they are no stranger to them in the past. And then they discover the young Wookiee Padawan, Gji, still on the run after Order 66. The group knows why he's apprehensive of them, the whole Order 66 thing and all that. Everyone except Omega, that is. To her, Gji is just another person who needs help, and she's more than ready to give that help. Sure, he might be a Jedi, the first one she's ever met actually, and that doesn't change things for her. Something Omega has always been good at is making friends everywhere she goes. It's also her first time experiencing something on a spiritual connection, learning about simple meditation and connecting with nature from Gji. This is the only time in the show that the Bad Batch fights alongside a Jedi, just like old times. Number 20, Hemlock's final moments. Man, this guy was something. He really was a diabolical bastard Imperial who had it all, and yet it took just one person to ruin his entire project, his career, and, well, his life, for that matter. The most striking part of his death was the platform and torrential downpour, just as though they were standing on Caminos suddenly instead of on Wayland. Omega has always placed her full trust in Hunter from the very beginning, and she has in Crosshair as well, and it took the combined efforts of all three of them to execute that takedown of Hemlock. Number 19, Tech's flying lessons. We all remember the visual of this one, Tech holding on with a white knuckle grip while Omega is just cruising along having the time of her life. It's something that we all loved in the moment that it happened, and by the way things are shown in the epilogue as well, this lesson just means so much more.
I'm getting better, right?
Number 18, Asajj and Omega. Prior to the release of the Bad Batch Season 3 trailer, I didn't have Asajj Ventress on my bingo card. The fan favorite Force user assassin showed up to help the batch. Well, sort of. She tried to teach them about M-Count and why it was important. Once finding out that Omega was important to M-Count, she began a series of training exercises, which led to her apparently deciding Omega did not have a high count. But those training sequences were awesome. They were very much reminiscent of Luke and Rey on Ahch-To in The Last Jedi. Anytime we get some chill Jedi or Force teachings, I'm all in. To top it all off, we got to see Ventress calm down a crazy giant sea monster. Very cool. And possibly a tease for Ventress later in another show? As Marauder Matt or Supreme Leader Snoke would say, we shall see. Number 17, the Zillo Beast. Who would have thought that something from way back in Season 2 of Clone Wars would pop up in Bad Batch? That's about a 14-year real-life gap between both appearances. Anyways, the Zillo Beast was back with a vengeance in Season 2 of the Bad Batch after an Imperial ship carrying the beast was downed. The Batch finds it in an episode that feels straight out of Alien or Predator. Clone Wars fans rejoiced seeing the beast again, and when it was revealed it would be headed to Tantus via the Empire, we all know we'd soon see it again. And we did, as it was key for one final attack on the base in the series finale. Leave it to Omega of all people to use a Zillo Beast for a distraction so she and the Force-sensitive kids could escape. Number 16, Omega's sacrifice for Pabu. Through Seasons 2 and 3, we see Omega learning things from Force users like Gji and Ventress. She may not have learned this from them specifically, but Omega does one of the most Jedi things ever during the attack on Pabu. She sacrifices herself to save the island and its people. Let's be real, among the batch, Omega is the smartest, and she knew the best move was to let the Empire take her. She trusted that her brothers would find her, and she didn't want any more innocent Pabuans to be hurt. She's not a Jedi or even a Force user, that we know of, but she followed in the footsteps of some of the greats in her actions that day. Such a great, impactful moment that will likely get overlooked. Number 15, Nala Se Redemption. I was never one to love the Caminoans, although their cloning technology in Star Wars has always fascinated me. It also didn't help with how they treated our clone trooper boys. I'll never forgive Nala Se and them for what happened to Fives. But we get a nice little redemption arc with Nala Se, and how she, 1, saves Omega multiple times, and 2, has a badass ending to her story. In the series finale, she goes to delete her work once and for all. What she doesn't know is that Rampart is following her and attempts to steal the knowledge of Project Necromancer. What Rampart doesn't know is that Nala Se is holding an armed thermal detonator. Rampart finishes his final blow to the Caminoans by blasting Nala Se, but she drops the thermal detonator, blowing up everyone and everything in that room. A very impactful moment and a perfect ending to both her and Rampart's story. You could say they both went out with a bang? I can't believe I wrote that.
Number 14, Order 66. When the show dropped, we all should have seen Order 66 coming.
Execute Order 66.
But we somehow are blindsided by it every time. The chips not working, or mostly not working at least, are that inciting incident of their journey in this galaxy without the support of the Republic and finding their way on their own. Order 66 hurts every single time, and it never gets easier to watch.
What are you doing? Following orders.
Number 13, Cody and Crosshair. One of the only times in Season 2 that we even see Crosshair, and the only time that we see Commander Cody in the series at all. Sporting that fresh, yet really drab, gray paint job, Crosshair gets a glimpse of the past with one of the only troopers beyond his former squad that he trusts, and Cody himself gets a wake-up call that this new empire really isn't his thing. There are a few incredible shots in this episode, both from Crosshair and just visually in general. Their entire encounter ends with a gut punch as well, when Crosshair wakes up the next morning hearing that Cody defected from the Empire completely, never to be heard from again. Number 12, Tech and Omega trapped in the cave. Something that's been clear about Tech from the very beginning of meeting the Bad Batch is he's very blunt and to the point.
This squad existed before Echo was a part of it, and it will exist after.
He's technical. He's also had his own struggles to show his feelings for others, something that his brothers never questioned in the past. That's just Tech. That's just how he is. But adding in Omega to their group changes things for him, literally changes his routines. He loves his little sister and places his full trust in her, but also struggles to show that. In The Crossing, Omega calls him out on how everything in their galaxy is changing. Echo had just left the group to help Rex right before this mission, and she thinks that Tech doesn't care at all that Echo just left them. Tech tries to tech his way out of the conversation and speaking about change being a fundamental part of life and all that. And he also reminds Omega that they're soldiers, it's their duty to adapt and move on. She tells him right away that they're more than just soldiers, they're family. He's taken aback by this, explaining that he respects his brother's decisions for leaving, both Echo and Crosshair, even though it's not really something he ever really understood himself. He goes on to also explain to her that he may process moments and thoughts differently than Omega, but it doesn't mean he feels it any less than her. It's a beautiful scene, and one of the most emotional ones in the entire series, albeit being as short as it is.
Number 11, Necromancer Reveal. Showrunners often teased that the show would connect to the events in The Mandalorian. That was finally revealed in Season 3 of The Bad Batch when Palpatine came to visit Dr. Hemlock on Mount Tantus. The two discussed the major top-secret project that was going on, Project Necromancer, the same project mentioned in Season 3 of The Mandalorian by Brendel Hux of the Imperial Remnant Shadow Council. We can only assume that that is the project that leads into the sequel trilogy of Palpatine's return, and it all stems back to his rule in the early days of the Empire, and probably even in the prequel era. He was really playing the long game, like always. Now, who expected The Bad Batch to connect to the sequel trilogy? As a wise man once said, it was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. And what better way for things to get foiled for old Palpatine than the Bad Batch and other clones stomping all over his plans? Love it. Number 10, Hera and Omega. Do you remember that era of Star Wars where there was essentially cameos of the week and everything? I'm looking at you, Mando Season 2 and Bad Batch Season 1. Well, here's one of the best ones. In a two-part arc featuring Ryloth under Imperial rule, we get to see our friends Hera Syndulla and Chopper, much younger versions of themselves, that is. A highlight in this arc is the time that young Hera spends with Omega. They're roughly the same age and essentially parallels of each other. They even both seem to inspire one another. Hera admires Omega living on a ship and hopes to do so one day, and she does. And Omega wishes to be a pilot one day like Hera seems to be getting towards, and now we know that she does. Hera is one of my all-time favorite characters, so to have her show up in The Bad Batch and hang out with Omega, now one of my other favorite Star Wars characters, was just pure gold. I really, really hope they get to see each other again in the Rebellion. Number 9, Omega and Crosshair escape. Crosshair tells Omega she should just try escaping on her own and not worry about freeing him, but let's be real, that's not in her DNA. Get it? DNA? Cloning? Alright, anyways. Not only does she free Crosshair with the help of Nala Se, but she also frees the Lurkahound Batcher earlier on Tantus, foreshadowing for the duo's escape. Omega and Crosshair were such an enjoyable duo to watch together, and it all started here, during their epic run for freedom. From quips about escaping during the one time Palpatine happened to be there, to discussing the plans and how Tech of course made Omega memorize them, to the trio of Omega, Crosshair, and Batcher taking out stormtroopers and stealing a ship to get the heck out of there. It was all perfect and definitely a top 10 moment in the show. Everyone loves a good prison break, especially in Star Wars.
Number 8, Crosshair and Hunter finding common ground. These two have one of the most interesting dynamics in the entire show. Ever since Season 1, they've always been shown as butting heads with each other, but if we look back further into the past, Crosshair and Hunter were always the closest with each other, keeping each other in check, knowing how the other one operates, and knowing how to exactly deal with them properly. The amount of chances Hunter had to find Crosshair and couldn't, or tried to get Crosshair to come back, and then he wouldn't. They're both just so stubborn, but know that the other one will do what needs to be done when the time is right. Crosshair, literally and figuratively this episode, breaks the ice. Hunter sees him dealing with Mayday's helmet and just lets him be, and eventually Crosshair admits that he has regrets over everything he did with the Empire, and Hunter finally forgives him. Number 7, Omega's first time in space. This is the moment that I knew that this show was special, that she was special. Omega was destined to do so much beyond Camino, and it really was her first steps into that larger galaxy. The entire group realizes how important of a moment for her this is and makes sure she gets the chance to see hyperspace for the first time with that front row seat. Everything from her expression, the lighting, and the swelling notes of her theme song for the first time, it's perfect. Number 6, inhibitor chip removal. Inhibitor chip removal at Claire's, everyone. Just kidding. It's Braca. Rex caught wind of the batch and immediately brings them to have their chips removed. Bringing the planet Braca into an animated series was a huge win for video game fans. In this episode, everything was going so well until, well, it didn't. Wrecker almost kills everyone, Rex disappears into the mist with the offer to join them at any time, Crosshair orders to aim for the kid, and then everyone almost kills Crosshair. And he has his chip metaphorically removed with that burn, and then Cad Bane shows up, and then they lose Omega. It's just, this entire arc, the hits just keep on coming, and they just keep on coming.
Number 5, exposing Rampart. Rampart's destruction of the cities on Camino is of course covered up by the Empire, but the great Senator Gji, Captain Rex, and others team up to do some digging in a tense thriller-type 2-part episode on Coruscant in Season 2. The batch eventually comes in to help out, and the evidence needed is obtained. During a big Senate meeting, the information is eventually relayed to Gji, who presents it to everyone there. We get this amazing hologram visual in the Senate of Rampart's ships raining down fire upon Camino, leaving the Senate stunned. Palpatine must have been ready for this moment because seconds later he comes rising out of the floor with an alarm blaring, declaring that Rampart acted alone and will be arrested. He also happens to mention that clone troopers will now be replaced with stormtroopers. The future is here. The Emperor himself rising out of the Senate floor is an iconic moment in the series, and I get chilling goosebumps anytime I rewatch it. Number 4, Mayday and Crosshair. One of my favorite episodes in all of Star Wars animation, The Outpost in Season 2 of The Bad Batch. In this episode, we see Crosshair headed to a freezing snow planet to help a severely depleted clone crew. This crew is led by Clone Commander Mayday, a very grizzled veteran who's been through hell, and he quickly became one of my favorite clones ever. Over the course of the episode, Crosshair and Mayday adventure out to retrieve stolen Imperial gear. During the journey, Crosshair goes from his usual stiff, selfish, grumpy self to someone who starts to care for others. This experience with Mayday really seems to rub off on Crosshair, like when he steps onto a landmine and Mayday saves him by digging up the mine, and of course Crosshair says something like he would have left Mayday behind if the roles were swapped. Later in the episode, after a battle and a massive avalanche of snow, Crosshair helps a badly wounded Mayday back to base, both of them clinging to life. When the head Imperial officer refuses to get aid for Mayday, who soon dies, Crosshair stands to his feet and guns down the officer.
Lieutenant.
Bringing him another massive step closer to redemption. A simply amazing sequence.
Number 3, Caminos Destruction. A planet that's the closest thing to home that a clone can get, all facilities are wiped away after one orbital airstrike. Sure, it was part of Palpatine's plan all along, but he easily pawns that off onto his underling Rampart, making him the face of that decision. This entire sequence, spanning 2 episodes for the Season 1 finale, was the reunion we all wanted to see of the entire Bad Batch, and then the gut punch of Crosshair choosing to stay behind after all of that. 32 rotations, man. Plus, a chance to see Camino in the sunlight finally after all of this time. This is easily one of the most gorgeous episodes of the entire series, as well as one of the most heartbreaking.
Number 2, Tech's death. Quite possibly the most impactful moment in the whole series, and it really didn't hit home with me until the end of the next season, due to all the wild speculation that he may or may not be still alive. This moment here changed the stakes of the whole show. They killed off one of the main characters. Anything could happen from here on out. And the way this whole sequence was done was perfection. We see Tech sacrifice himself, fall, and then everything is just a huge blur. The audio goes quiet to a ringing, distorted type sound, and we process this moment as if we are Omega. Then things just sort of black out and we resume later at Sid's. Did that really happen? Unfortunately, yes, as it's confirmed once Dr. Hemlock shows up and tosses Tech's broken goggles onto the floor. Those goggles would go on to be an iconic prop for the show in the final season.
Number 1, the Epilog. The moment Pabu Island was shown from above, we knew this was something special. The lights turn on and Omega is all grown up. Hunter and Batcher are as well. Everything about this scene is the promise of a new beginning. The Bad Batch had their fight, and they finished it. They had their normal life. Omega knows that she can do more, and she wants to help. The toughest thing that you can ever do to protect someone is to eventually let them go. And Hunter does just that.
So, there you have it. The top 25 moments of the show.
What were your favorite moments from the series? Was it on our list? There were many additional things we wanted to put on here, but we had to put a limit on it, otherwise, just at that point, just rewatch the entire series.
Thanks everyone for watching. Again, be sure to like and subscribe for more Star Wars content, and we will see you on the HoloNet.